Power of chromatics. Chromatics is communication through the use of color. Colors of clothing, products, packaging, gifts. They send intended or unintended messages when people communicate cross-culturally. Colors have cultural variations and connotations. Black is the color of mourning in the West, but white is worn to funerals by the Japanese. In the West, white is typically worn by brides, while in India, red is something which is worn. Purple is sometimes associated with royalty, but it is the color of death in Mexico and Brazil. Red, especially the red rose, is associated with romance in some cultures, including the West. United Airlines unknowingly got off on the wrong foot during its initial flights from Hong Kong. To commemorate the occasion, they handed out white carnations to the passengers when they learned that to many Asians, white flowers represented bad luck and even death. They changed to red carnations. Color is the visual perceptual property corresponding in humans to the categories called red, blue, yellow. Color derives from the spectrum of light, the distribution of light power versus the wavelength interacting in the eye with the spectral sensitivities of the light receptors. Color categories and physical specifications of color are also associated with objects or materials based on their physical properties, such as light absorption, reflection, or emission spectra. By defining a color, space colors can be identified numerically by the coordinates. The science of color is sometimes called chromatics, colorimetry, color science. It includes the perception of color by the human eye and the brain, the origin of color in the materials, the color theory in art, and the physics of electromagnetic radiation in the visible range. That is what is commonly referred to simply as the light. The color of an object depends on the physics of the object in its environment, the physics of light in its environment, and the characteristics of the perceiving eye and the brain. Physically, objects can be said to have the color of the light leaving their surfaces if it travels through the vacuum of space and does not pass through a physical medium such as a prism. The perceived color normally depends on the spectrum of the incident illumination, the wave velocity, the reflectance properties of the surface, and the potentially on the angles of illumination and viewing. Some objects not only reflect light but also transmit light or emit light themselves. They also contribute to the color. A viewer's perception of the object's color depends not only on the spectrum of the light leaving its surface, but also on a host of contextual cues, so that color differences between objects can be discerned mostly independent of the lighting spectra. Viewing angle. This effect is known as color constancy. Excuse me. Although Aristotle and other ancient scientists have already written on the nature of light and color vision, it was not until Newton that light was identified as the source of the color sensation. In 1810, Goethe published his comprehensive theory of colors, in which he provided a rational description of color experience, which tells us how it originates, not what it is. The ability of the human eye to distinguish colors is based upon the varying sensitivity of different cells in the retina to light of the different wavelengths. Humans are dichromatic. The retina contains 3 types of color receptor cells or cones. One type, relatively distinct from the other 2, is most responsive to light that is perceived as blue or blue-violet, called the short wavelength cones or the S cones, or the other 2 are the closely related genetically and chemically middle wavelength cones or the M cones and the green cones, and the most sensitive to light perceived as green, while the long wavelength cones or the L cones and the red cones. If one or more types of a person's color sensing cones are missing or less responsive than normal to incoming light, that person can distinguish fewer colors and is said to be color deficient or colorblind. Some kinds of color deficiency are also caused by anomalies in the number of nature of the cones in the retina. Others are caused by the neural anomalies in those parts of the brain where visual processing takes place. While most humans are trichromatic, they have 3 types of color receptors. Many animals are tetrachromats. They have 4 types. These include some species of spiders, some marsupials, some birds, some reptiles, and many species of fish. Other species are sensitive to only 2 axes of colors or do not perceive color at all. These are called dichromats and monochromats respectively. In certain forms of synesthesia, ideathesia, perceiving letters and numbers, which is called the grapheme color synesthesia, excuse me, or hearing musical sounds, which is called the music color synesthesia, will lead to the unusual additional experiences of seeing colors. Behavioral and functional neuroimaging experiments have demonstrated that these color experiences lead to changes in behavioral tasks and lead to increased activation of brain regions involved in color perception, thus demonstrating their reality and similarity to real color percepts, albeit evoked through a non-standard route. After exposure to strong light in their sensitivity range, photoreceptors of a given type become desensitized. For a few seconds after the light ceases, they will continue to signal less strongly than they otherwise would. Colors observed during this type of the period will appear to lack the color component detected by the desensitized photoreceptors. This effect is responsible for the phenomenon of after images, in which the eye may continue to see a bright figure even after looking away from it, but in a complementary color. After image effects have also been utilized by artists like Vincent van Gogh. Colors, their meanings, associations can play a major role in works of art, including literature. Individual colors have a variety of cultural associations, such as national colors in the generally described individual color articles and color symbolism. The field of color psychology attempts to identify the effects of color on human emotions and activity and behavior. Chromotherapy is a form of alternative medicine attributed to various Eastern traditions. Colors have different associations in different countries and cultures. Different colors have been demonstrated to have effects on cognition. For example, researchers at the University of Linz in Austria demonstrated that the color red significantly decreases the cognitive functioning in men. When XX chromosomes combine, they form a girl, and the X chromosomes are the ones that carry the gene for the color recognition. They also have more of the cone cells. This is the reason girls generally are good with colors in comparison to boys. Primary colors are red, yellow and blue, and the red, green and blue are called additive primary colors. They are normally used in additive color systems such as projectors and computer terminals. Structural color is studied in the field of thin film optics. The most ordered or the most changeable structural colors are iridescent. Structural color is responsible for the blues and greens of the feathers of many birds, the blue jay, for example, as well as certain butterfly wings and beetle shells. Variations in the pattern spacing often give rise to an iridescent effect, as seen in the peacock feathers, so bubbles, films of oil and mother of pearl. Because the reflected color, it depends upon the viewing angle. So today we discussed about the power of chromatics and how color plays a very important role in our psyche, in our human reaction, response and behavior understanding. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something new. See you in the next episode. Take care and have a good day.